A suspect arrested in connection with last week's car chase in which an officer opened fire. Alibaba founder Jack Ma reportedly going to retire next week to focus on philanthropy. And Obama speaks out against Trump.
Good evening. Police have pressed charges on a man who allegedly stole a van that triggered an officer to open fire during a car chase last week. Christy Leung walks us through the crime scene reconstruction in Tai Po.
Investigators returned to Lam Kam Road interchange where they lost track of a suspect last Thursday. They led a 36-year-old man there after arresting him in Shangshui yesterday. He allegedly stole a van from a noodle factory but managed to flee the scene after officers gave chase. Hooded and chained around the waist, the suspect was arrested for 7 charges, including furious driving, attempted wounding and robbery. They spent around 5 minutes at the interchange. Then they headed to Kwong Fok Estate in Tai Po, as well as On Lok Village near On Fok Street in Fanling. That's where a noodle factory employee spotted the company's stolen van and tried to intercept. Police later joined in the chase, but when they reached the Lam Kam Road interchange, the driver of the stolen vehicle jumped out and hopped into a nearby private car. A policeman opened fire when the driver of the private car tried to run them over. Officers are still searching for 2 suspects on the run. Police suspect the arrested man has triad connections and may also be involved in a separate robbery case in Lok Ma Chau. Christy Leung, TVB News.
Police have arrested a driver on suspicion of illegal carriage of passenger for hire or reward and access to computer with dishonest intent. Uber says it's conducting an internal investigation. The 44-year-old man was arrested in an anti-drink driving operation at daybreak. The driver, who carried a female passenger in his back seat, had reportedly failed the breathalyzer test. Not only that, police also found a pair of pinhole cameras behind the car's 2 front seats, which might have been used to take photos of passengers' thighs. Officers later found indecent video footage on 2 phones as well. The driver is now released on bail. Hong Kong's leading baker stressed muffin supplies won't be affected after a fire broke out at its factory this morning. Around 400 people fled the Garden Company's production facility in Sham Cheng. Haley Zhou with details.
Instead of muffins, the building was turning out smoke this morning. Firefighters sped to the scene to control the blaze on the 7th floor of Block A of the factory in Shamzang. It's owned by the Garden Company Limited, a local bakery with more than 90 years history. Hundreds of people were evacuated. They waited by the roadside as more firemen arrived to battle the blaze that was upgraded to a number 3 alarm. The fire was largely put out at around 11:30, 3 hours after it started.
Fire covering an area of about 5 meters times 50 meters. At the end, a baking machine was damaged by fire. Due to the large floor area, heavy smoke and high temperature, we upgraded the fire incident to number 3 alarm. About 50 staff of the industrial building self-evacuated to place of the safety. We deployed 183 FS personnel, 75 appliances, 4 ambulances, with 3 jets and 4 PA teams to tackle the fire.
He said there appeared to be no suspicious circumstances surrounding the fire. A company representative says they do safety checks regularly. He said the production line that caught fire are for muffins, but there are enough supplies to last 4 days, and other production lines are unaffected. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
China's trade surplus with the United States widened to a record in August, even as the country's export growth slowed slightly. It's an outcome that could push US President Donald Trump to turn up the heat on Beijing in the growing Sino-US trade war. Trump upped the ante on Friday, warning he was ready to slap tariffs on nearly all Chinese imports to the United States. He threatened duties on another $267 billion worth of goods on top of $200 billion in imports primed for levies in the coming days.
I'm being strong on China because I have to be. They're taking $500 billion out a year. Can't let that happen. Nobody's ever done what I've done. And the $200 billion we're talking about could take place very soon, depending on what happens with them. But we've taxed them $50 billion, that's on technology. Now we've added another $200 billion. And I hate to say this, but behind that, there's another $267 billion ready to go on short notice. Japan has already contacted us. They came last week. And I'll tell you, if we don't make a deal with Japan, Japan knows it's a big problem.
Jack Ma, the co-founder of Alibaba, has reportedly decided to step down from the e-commerce company. According to the New York Times, Ma will officially retire on his birthday on Monday when he turns 54. The report says the former English teacher wants to focus on doing philanthropy work in education. It also says Ma will remain on the company's board of directors and continue to mentor its management. He started Alibaba back in 1999 and helped to grow it into a $420 billion business. Ma is now Chinese third richest person and has a net worth of $36.6 billion.
A 5.9 magnitude earthquake rocked the southwestern part of Yunnan province on the mainland this morning. 4 people suffered minor injuries. The quake struck the Mojiang area just after 10:30 a.m. with the epicenter at a depth of 11 kilometers. Terrified villagers rushed out of their homes to open space. Media reports say 21 buildings were damaged. Residents of high-rise buildings in Kunming, the provincial capital, some 270 kilometers away, also felt the tremors. Just 3 weeks ago, a 5 magnitude earthquake also shook the Yuxi area in Yunnan, leaving 24 people injured.
In Japan, the death toll has risen to 35 from Thursday's earthquake. The aftermath shows the quake triggered landslides that buried houses throughout the Hokkaido region. It also paralyzed residents with widespread power and transport cuts. On the upside, Hokkaido Electric restored power to 2.9 million customers earlier today. But the impact of the quake is also affecting Toyota Motor Corporation. It's decided to suspend work at 16 plants on Monday due to the shutdown of its transmission factory in Hokkaido.
George Papadopoulos, the Trump campaign advisor who triggered the Russia investigation, was sentenced to 14 days in prison. This after he told a judge he was deeply embarrassed and ashamed for lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian intermediaries. Papadopoulos, the first campaign aide sentenced in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation, acknowledged his actions hindered an investigation of national importance. The punishment was far less than the maximum 6-month sentence sought by prosecutors.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump took turns blasting each other at competing campaign rallies ahead of the midterm election. Bitter rivals went head-to-head in dueling campaign speeches to entice the electorate to support their respective parties. It started with Barack Obama in Illinois, painting the Republican Party as coming apart at the seams.
Got a lot of good Republican friends here in Illinois. But over the past few decades, the politics of division and resentment and paranoia has unfortunately found a home in the Republican Party. I'm here to deliver a simple message, and that is that you need to vote because our democracy depends on it.
Then he pointed to a purported member of Donald Trump's own administration who told the New York Times he and other staff are allegedly working to thwart Trump's dangerous impulses.
The claim that everything will turn out okay because there are people inside the White House who secretly aren't following the president's orders, that is not a check. I'm being serious here. That's not how our democracy is supposed to work.
Then Obama bashed Trump for trying to take credit for what he claims he started.
It did not start with Donald Trump. He is a symptom, not the cause.
During his campaign rally in North Dakota, Trump dished it right back by calling Obama's speech a yawner.
I'm sorry, I watched it, but I fell asleep. I found he's very good for sleeping.
And Trump said, how dare Obama try to take credit for the economic gains his administration has brought to America.
He was trying to take credit for this incredible thing that's happening to our country. If the Democrats got in with their agenda in November of almost 2 years ago, instead of having 4.2 up, I believe honestly you'd have 4.2 down. You'd be negative. You'd be in negative numbers right now.
Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump was taped criticizing the Russia collusion probe as bad for the country and midterm elections.
It's such a sad thing for a country to be going through a witch hunt like that. It's so hard for us to deal with other countries, including Russia, because of that witch hunt. It endangers our country. It really endangers our country. It puts us at a big disadvantage, all because of the rigged, phony witch hunt.
And still ahead on the news tonight. Efforts to forestall a Syrian government offensive in Idlib province. A probe continues into last night's washroom explosion at Hong Kong police station. And a call for child protection legislation to cover emotional and psychological abuse.
Violence has erupted in Iraq, where protesters have set fire to nearly every government building in the city of Basra. The Iranian consulate was also torched. Demonstrators took to the streets Friday night and stormed the Iranian consulate to vent their frustration over the lack of basic services in Basra. They insist they suffer from a crippling electricity shortage and polluted water they can't drink, shower, or wash their clothes in. All this amid the sweltering heat of the summer months. They're also angry over rampant government corruption and Iranian meddling that they believe contributes to their dire economic situation. The Iraqis perceive it as Iranian influence over Iraq's political parties. Security forces say the consulate was empty when the angry mobs broke in. Other buildings torched include the headquarters of the ruling Dawa party and the offices of the state-run TV station. Fires were also set to the headquarters of almost every Iranian-backed militia in the city. At least 10 protesters have died while clashing with security forces in demonstrations that began last Monday. Iraqi security forces have imposed curfews but have not been able to stop protesters from rioting. Demonstrators escalated the unrest on Thursday when they shut down Qasr, Iraq's only major seaport. It handles the vast majority of imports into a country dependent on food bought abroad to feed its 37 million citizens. The civil unrest is now threatening to sink the country back into complete chaos. Residents fear terrorists will use the crisis to their advantage. They worry this is the kind of unrest terrorist groups like ISIS thrive on. Officers were kept busy last night after an explosion at Hong Kong police station. Government engineers said a water heater could be to blame. The explosion reduced this 5-by-5 meter washroom to rubble and smashed the partitions. The force of the blast was so strong that it shattered glass. An exhaust fan from the 11th floor ended up at a gas station on the other side of Princess Margaret Road. 2 drivers were slightly injured but did not require hospital treatment. Officers say there's nothing suspicious about the explosion, but authorities will look into boilers used at different police stations as they believe the equipment may be at fault.
Authorities are investigating a case of Legionnaire's disease at RTHK. The local broadcaster confirmed one of their male staff members from the video news team is being treated at Princess Margaret Hospital. It's unclear how he fell ill. Men, especially smokers, are more prone to the disease, especially if they breathe in contaminated droplets and mist generated by artificial water systems. In general, Legionnaire's disease is not transmitted by person-to-person contact.
Concerned groups for children's rights say local kids are suffering in silence because the law in Hong Kong does not cover emotional or psychological abuse. Pinky Wong has more.
In the first 6 months this year, local authorities received more than 550 child abuse cases. While the city set up a commission on children in June to advance child protection, it faces strong criticism for lacking voices of minors. It's also inconsistent with United Nations guidelines, which say such a body should be independent of the government and hold powers to investigate violations.
I want to emphasize the participation of the children because they are the stakeholders. Their rights are at the stake, so they should be involved.
The United Nations representative was one of 4 speakers at a conference held at the University of Hong Kong. The panel debated on policies to further benefit children's health and learning. Even the former director of public prosecutions think there's work to do in the legal sector.
In England and other jurisdictions, the definitions have been extended so that emotional abuse, psychological abuse can also be prosecuted. That hasn't happened here.
Chief Secretary for Administration Matthew Chang, who chairs the Commission on Children, said members will examine existing laws at their upcoming meeting. NGOs are encouraged to document child abuse cases rather than simply relying on government statistics. Participants said there's the only way for society to get a full picture of how children's rights have been neglected, such as the right to leisure and play. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
And from all of us, thanks for joining us.